Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, survivors, families, and communities were shaken once again by the discovery of 215 children in unmarked graves into Kamloops to Sequepim at the Kamloops Indian Residential School, the largest school in the Indian Affairs residential school system. I want to extend my sympathies to the community, survivors, and families. I lift you up today and every day. But Madam Speaker, unfortunately, this tragedy is not the first time we have discovered the remains of little children found around these schools and acts of genocide that were more the norm and not the exception. According to the TRC, at least 40 to 60% of children who attended these schools died, sometimes, according to Mary Ellen Kelm, as a result of purposefully exposing them to infections such as TB, spreading the disease through the school population. And Murray Sinclair, former TRC commissioner, has said he believes the death count could be even much higher due to the school's poor burial records. Sacred lives, Madam Speaker, children exposed to acts of genocide, often to never return home. Families left without answers about where their loved ones were, like the children from Brandon Residential School, where the bodies of more than 50 children were discovered on the institution's grounds in 2019. It is now, Madam Speaker, being used as a private campground, and survivors and impacted family members, including Jennifer Rattray, are working to find closure. As she stated in a CBC interview today, in quotes, "The families and communities whose children are lost while attending these schools have questions and deserve answers. The children buried at these sites must have their identities restored and their stories told. They will never be forgotten." Can you imagine, Madam Speaker, having to ask permission to honor the remains of children who perished as a result of genocide? Permission. And the fact that genocide against Indigenous people is so normalized that it actually needs to be discussed, even in the death of our children. They are disrespected and disregarded. Families and survivors and communities need closure, and the spirits of our lost children need to be nurtured. They need to be put to rest. They need peace. We need to act now, and at the very minimum, at the very least, heed the 94 calls to action supported by adequate funding, including calls to action 71 to 76. We need to fund, Madam Speaker, nations to complete their own radar ground searches at all Indian residential school sites, supported by the Federation of Sovereign Indian Nations, Long Plain First Nation, Pachigamak Cree Nation, AFN, and so many others. We need to, Madam Speaker, block off all residential school sites immediately as active crime scenes so that Indigenous nations, survivors, and families can decide how they want to proceed in their search for their loved ones. It should be treated like a crime scene, according to Chief Dennis Meaches from Long Plain First Nation. Stop fighting residential school survivors, including ones from St. Anne's, and provide emergency and ongoing supports for survivors, families, and communities who continue to deal with this trauma as a result of the residential school system. And Madam Speaker, we need to recognize what happened as a genocide, not as a cultural genocide. It meets the criteria as genocide under the UN Convention for Genocide. We need this government and all the members of Parliament to support us in bringing our children home. Madam Speaker, and everyone in this House today, I want you to please allow us to have that justice, to get that closure and bring our children home. Thank you, Madam Speaker.